Well, hello there, Trinity and LSA families. This is Pastor Truwe with my Week 8 video introducing and unpacking the week's devotional content for my doctoral project, Speaking with One Voice, Catechesis in the Home, the Congregation, and the School. This week's theme is the sixth commandment, which will give you, parents, teachers, myself included, Sunday school teachers, an opportunity to get into some topics that you'll have to consider the age of your students and what is appropriate to discuss at what age. Parents, we especially want to encourage you to be engaged in the discussion this week with some sensitive topics. So the sixth commandment, you shall not commit adultery. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we lead a sexually pure and decent life in what we say and do, and husband and wife love and honor each other. Like with many biblical topics, the best way to study the sixth commandment is to start with the teaching's institution, or the estate's institution. And so like with baptism, we want to look at those passages first where Christ himself instituted baptism. The same with the Lord's Supper. Where did Jesus institute the Lord's Supper? Where did he establish it and set it up, create it, and give it as the gift that it is? So with the sixth commandment, by which the Lord protects his gift of marriage, we want to start where the Lord gives this gift, where he institutes it, establishing it and setting it up with the parameters by which he will protect the gift of marriage, the procreation of children, and the raising of children by ensuring that those children would be raised by both a mom and a dad in a home built upon the self-sacrificial love of Christ. So that is why in Sunday school and also then on Wednesday in chapel, the key reading for this week is from Genesis chapters 1 and 2, where we will hear of the Lord establishing marriage and giving it its purposes. Yes, marriage is for the companionship of a husband and wife. It is not good for man to be alone. And so he gives Adam a helper, Eve, and the two became one flesh. There's a second purpose, is that man and woman would have an outlet for their sexual desires. And in the garden, there were no sinful sexual desires. This was a God-pleasing thing, as the man and woman became one flesh, and resulted then in the gift of life, which is the third purpose for marriage, that life would be given. Now just imagine that for a second. With a man and a woman giving themselves to one another in self-sacrificial love, becoming one flesh, God blesses that act, that beautiful, pleasurable act, with the gift of life. And so we are to receive the gift of life with thanksgiving. And in this holy estate, intended by God for a man and a woman to live together until death parts them, those children would have parents, and they would have two parents. And so this is the estate that God established. He instituted, he set it up, and so he decides what it is. And so we receive this gift with thanksgiving. Now, of course, anytime you're studying the sixth commandment, you have opportunity to talk about those instances in our lives where people have lived contrary to, or things have happened as a result of sin that are not in keeping with the sixth commandment. And so we need to be able to talk about that. And Monday's reading gives us an opportunity to do just that, as we hear Jesus teaching from Mark chapter 10, where he asserts that divorce is sin, and that divorce makes both the husband and the wife an adulterer. And now, we do need to say that divorce is terrible. It's the tearing apart of what God has joined together. And so this is why we learn in the sixth commandment that we are to support and encourage husband and a wife to stay and do their duty. We do not desire divorce. And those who have been through divorce know that divorce is a nasty, difficult thing, and oftentimes creates other difficult problems later on. And yet Christ died for this as well. And so those who have already gone through this, have already suffered through this burden, we do want you to know that Jesus has died for you as well, and that there is forgiveness, that there's no sin that is outside of the death of Christ, other than rejecting him and saying, I don't want your forgiveness. The sin of divorce and any other sin that is under the sixth commandment is a sin for which Christ died. So, and how do we see this? Tuesday's reading, Ephesians 5:22-23, has this profound statement at the end of this long section talking about husbands and wives and submission and self-sacrificial love, that where this mystery of a husband loving his wife as Christ has loved the church and giving himself up for her, and the wife receiving that love and honoring her husband in return. That relationship is profound, and Paul says that it refers to Christ and the church. Think about that for a second. How a man loves his wife in a self-sacrificial way, loving her, forgiving her daily, no matter what she is doing, and how well she is being a wife, and what have you, is to be is to be an icon, an image by which we learn and understand Christ's own love for us. And I might even argue that we don't understand how a husband is to love his wife if we don't understand Christ's love for the church. Only then can we see, oh, I'm a husband. This is how I'm supposed to treat my bride, just as Christ has treated me and continues to forgive me week after week and day after day. My same foolish pride and sin is brought to him. I failed again, and the bride of Christ is forgiven by her husband Christ, who continues to love her. And so we see this self-sacrificial, never-ending love that is to be given to the wife by her husband, and so she honors him by returning that kind of love, just as the church honors Christ by giving him all thanks and praise. Thursday's reading from 1 Corinthians 7 is a very important reading, as Paul discusses some very difficult situations. For example, when a woman, a Christian woman, is married to a non-Christian man, what is that situation? And how is she to bear the burden of being a faithful example, not divorcing him? For to do that is to give an example of Christ, as Christ divorcing us and getting rid of us if things aren't just right. But he doesn't do that. He continues to stay with us and love us and forgive us. And so the wife, and we have to understand this then also too, as a Christian husband married to a non-Christian wife, we are to stay and do our duty, and to bring, to fulfill our call in those difficult situations, and bring Christ to our spouse. So then Friday, our reading is from 1 Peter 3, 1-7, where Paul lays out again, similarly to what he does in Ephesians 5, kind of what is the vocation of a wife and a husband. And so the sixth commandment, sometimes we sort of blush when we have to teach the sixth commandment, because we think it's only about sex or something like that. But in fact, the sixth commandment is all about marriage. And so if we're teaching this correctly, these questions of sex are secondary. Yes, they're there and they're important and they need to be discussed, but they're discussed then in their proper context. Just like fire is a beautiful thing and gives heat, and you can cook at it when it's kept in the proper place, in a fireplace or in the stove. So too, God's gift of sex is a beautiful thing when it's kept in the proper place. That context of a man and a wife living together in faithful love, devoted love toward one another, till death do them part, and ensuring that their children and any blessings of life that the Lord would give to them would be raised by a mom and a dad who themselves bear witness to their own kids of what that kind of love might look like. So, the sixth commandment, you shall not commit adultery. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we lead a sexually pure and decent life in what we say and do, and husband and wife love and honor each other. And God bless your week as you spend time with your families and your students in His Word.